The Russian-Ukrainian war in Eastern Europe continues to affect the world militarily, diplomatically, politically, and socio-economically. With a very short time in 2023, the new war strategy of the Ukrainian army in the last days has increased the tension on the front line. In this period of the war's hottest moments, the problems of the Russian troops in the lack of ammunition create the opportunity for the Ukrainian armed forces to prepare new offensive operations, and divine justice has become true. Towards the end of December, the Moscow army continued its attacks on civilian targets on Ukrainian soil, while the shortcomings of ammunition suggested by British intelligence a few days ago caused turmoil in Putin's army. On the one hand, Russia is targeting Ukrainian energy infrastructures. On the other hand, it was gradually withdrawing its troops, especially from Donetsk Oblast. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, this retreat of the Moscow army in the city of Bakhmut in Donetsk, where the most severe attacks took place, was purely a tactical strategy. But Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Russian leader Vladimir Putin were both aware of the hidden truth behind this retreat. The Moscow army no longer had enough resources to carry out an oppressive and new offensive operation. We can easily understand this situation from the recent events that took place on the front lines in the territory of Ukraine. For the first time, Russia has been so crushed under the pressure of the armed forces of Ukraine. When we take a look at the clashes that took place in the line of fire this week, we see that the Ukrainian army has carried out many more attacks and took the divine winds behind it. In order to seize this superiority in the war, Ukraine greatly strengthened its army, especially in terms of air force. The unmanned aerial vehicles and other war equipment currently used by the Ukrainian Air Force can pose a serious threat to Russia's air defense systems. Now equipped with NATO-compatible technology, the Ukrainian army's inventory seems always ready for new possible offensive operations. The Moscow administration, which is trying to heal the wounds of its army due to the war, is trying to take serious measures against air attacks, mostly both in Russia and in the barracks of the Russian army in Ukraine, in order to eliminate the threats of the Ukrainian armed forces. Because the Ukrainian Air Force has focused on airstrikes against Russia in the last weeks. Russia in particular is trying to protect its cities on the border with Ukraine after 9 months of landings and logistics support for its evil purposes over the border cities. However, those who serve evil purposes are very fond of hellfire. The Ukrainian Air Force and Special Operations Forces make them taste hellfire in order to provide divine justice and serve holy purposes. Last week, a very violent explosion occurred late at night in the Russian city of Kursk. According to the residents, around 2 a.m. there was a deafening explosion that could be heard from almost anywhere in the city. This incident, which was reflected on a security camera in Kursk, frightened the citizens of the city. According to video footage, near an apartment in the center of the city, with the severity of the explosion, the alarms of the vehicles on the road started to sound. There was no statement from the head of the Kursk region, Roman Starovoyt, regarding the incident. Russian authorities blamed Ukraine for this incident. On the same day as these explosions, there was another explosion, this time in Belgorod. According to the allegations, the Ukrainian army could now easily target the Russian lands and launched attacks first in Kursk and then in Belgorod. The explosions in Belgorod also occurred late at night as in Kursk. According to some intelligence reports, the Ukrainian armed forces had started night operations in Russia. This explosion created a very serious panic environment throughout Russia. Moscow authorities were aware of the obvious shortcomings of air defense in the country. In the Russian border cities, a state of emergency was declared as of September, and also martial law-like rules were applied from time to time. Russia was now very afraid of Ukrainian attacks. Most of the Russian citizens in this region had already fled into Russia. While this turmoil was going on in Russia, a shocking event that took place in Voronezh a few days ago also drew the attention to this region. In and around the territory of Voronezh, sirens sounded uninterruptedly for about 3 minutes, warning of the threat of an air raid. Russia knew this voice very well. Residents thought that there was a Ukrainian attack directly in the city right after the sirens sounded en masse. Currently, there was a very sensitive environment in Russia due to the explosions and attacks that took place this week. Thereupon, the mysterious siren sounds in Voronezh made us think that Ukraine was targeting this region. This event was videotaped by local residents. In addition, the sound of the sirens en masse was reflected in the security cameras in Voronezh. After the recent Ukrainian Air Force attacks on military airfields in Ryazan and Saratov, Russian authorities announced that these sirens sounded for a means of strength training and population protection. But residents of the Voronezh region did not quite believe this announcement. The suspicions of the citizens of the city were not unfounded. The reason is that a new explosion occurred in Kursk, Russia. Russia had almost turned into a place of fire. There was an explosion almost every day in the country, sirens sounding in Voronezh, followed by explosions in Kursk, that showed Russia was not a safe country at all anymore. New eruptions in Kursk occurred again at midnight a few days ago. If we consider other explosions in Russia, the latest incident in Kursk gives us some clues. As we mentioned, the Ukrainian armed forces started operations on the Russian soil at dawn. This latest explosion in Kursk took place very late at night. In fact, residents reported numerous explosions near the Kursk airport. Some citizens living here stated that they were loud noises near the train station in the center of the city. Ukrainian Telegram channels also reported explosions near the airport in Kursk. Russian authorities and propaganda organizations have yet to comment on the matter. In fact, the detail that Russia was trying to hide came to light again with the latest explosions in Kursk. Ukraine wanted to bring the war to a breaking point. Aware of the heavy losses of the Moscow army, the Kiev soldiers, especially in the last week, attacked the invading troops dramatically and forced them out of their area. The allegations that Zelensky's soldiers are preparing a controlled and simultaneous attack plan on the front line in Ukraine in Donetsk, Luhansk, around Kherson and Crimea after New Year's Day does not currently remove the Russians from their defensive position. The war has already moved to Russia. Now the number of main fronts that the Moscow administration has to lead also has increased. Ukraine's constant threats of airstrikes distract Moscow. Russian leader Vladimir Putin will either renounce some areas on the Ukrainian fronts to defend the attacks in his country, or explosions will continue to occur on Russian soil every day after New Year's Day. Considering the difficult conditions of the winter season, it seems that the Russians will have a difficult time in the new year. Anyone who wishes to invade a country in the Great Eurasian Steppes will eventually have to spend the winter there. Napoleon, Hitler, and Stalin had to advance their armies in the steppe winter. And now Russian President Vladimir Putin is pushing the invasion back to the front and positioning his forces for the Russian offensive in the spring. Both sides need a pause, but Ukrainians are better equipped and more motivated to continue. We can expect the Ukrainians to maintain their pressure at least in the Donbass. In Crimea and Svatove, they are very close to achieving a major breakthrough that will push the Russian troops back to the natural line of defense, 65 kilometers away, to the point where their invasion began. Ukraine will be reluctant to stop because the immediate gain is large, but Ukraine's progress may perhaps stall in the southwest after the new year. For Ukraine to cross the eastern bank of the Dnieper and put pressure on Russia's road and rail links to vulnerable Crimea can be overwhelming. But the possibility of Kiev launching a new surprise attack is undeniable. In 2023, the main determinant will be Russia's spring offensive. Putin admitted that 50,000 newly recruited soldiers were at the front. 250,000 Russian soldiers who have just been recruited are also training for next year. Until the fate of these new Russian troops at the front is determined, there is nothing but more war on the horizon. A short and unstable ceasefire is another possibility. Putin has made it clear that he will not stop. But surprisingly, the constant voice of peace negotiations can also lead to unexpected events on the battlefield. We will see this together in the following processes. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications in order to be informed about new videos. Thank you for watching us.